Hello and welcome to another video. So it's been a while, but I've really got into Master Duel. I was really looking forward to this game. Been lots of fun so far. We've started off with an Invoked Shaddoll build that I've been working on. This is one very similar, almost identical to what I play physically. Obviously minus Max C since in TCG that is banned. But other than that, you know, pretty stock standard. A few adjustments because, you know, it's Master Duel. But overall, pretty much what I've been running. It's taken me up to, I was in Plat 5, I dropped down into Gold 1 because I had a bad luck streak for a bit and dropped down, but haven't been climbing my way back up there, so yeah, top of Gold 1. I shouldn't be too far off Platinum 5 again, so not too bad so far. Of course, mandatory Max C at 3. You could also put in something like Called By instead, or Ash Blossom. I'm also running Ash Blossom. They're basically hand traps, that's what those slots are for. Mostly going to probably play Max C, since the one thing you want in this deck are resources typically. It also shuts down combo decks, which is a big thing for this deck to do. That is the point of things like Winder. So obviously the core cards for the deck being the Shaddoll monsters. Hedgehog fetches your spell or trap when flipped, grabs your monster when sent by card effect. Squamata destroys for flip, sends a card for what's it called, for its graveyard effect, which is fine. Basically, that's what the Shaddolls do. One's flip effect, one's a card effect from grave when sent to grave. So it's really the big ones. Wendy, special summons for both her effects, which is really good. And that's the main core of that, along with obviously Beast. Draw. And Nef Shaddoll, it's okay for its effect. It's basically can either make a Shaddoll monster, unaffected by monster effects, except its own, which is fine for flip effect, and its secondary effect is to basically negate a card on field, so that's also fine. But mainly I'm just using that as Shekinah fodder. There are a handful of Earth decks, as you'll see. We're going to go up against a Traptrix deck. That's the video I got for you today. That was one of the better matches I had while I was climbing, which showed off most of what this deck's designed to do. Of course, we're also running the Invoke package, which is your 3 Alistars, your 2 Meltdowns since they are limited, Terraforming to fetch Meltdown, which then fetches Alistar, which obviously then fetches Invocation. Invocation lets you fusion summon from hand, from graveyard, from field. Lots of variations. Invocation's a very strong fusion spell. That's the base core for the Invocation set. You're obviously running a Macabre for that, because Macabre is your negation. You have any card you have to match it, basically. If you have a Macabre, match it with a card, negate that type of card. You just have to discard it. Kargalea only allows each player to attempt to activate 1 monster effect per turn, and you only get to attack with 1 monster during each battle phase each, so it's fine. It's a pretty solid card when it comes up. It's really good. Then I'm also running the Artemis, because that's a light monster that you can instantly turn Alistar into, which then allows you to go straight into Macabre. So effectively you can go 1 card combo into a Macabre, which is really good. So all you have to have is either Terraforming, Meltdown, or Alistar. Any one of those cards is fine. As long as you don't get interrupted, you can go straight into the Macabre, which is a really nice setup from there. Really good as a 1-card setup. Foolish Burial as a 1-off, because you can only have 1 in this. Allows you to send any card you want. Typically it's going to be a Shaddoll for a Shaddoll effect. Sometimes you might need a light monster for another effect. So Trick Clown, really good. It can go to, when it goes to grave, no matter the condition, I believe, as long as it's sent to grave anyway. You can then special summon it back at least once per turn, which is good. So you can basically fusion summon it off with any card that you've got for fusioning at this point, and then bring it straight back and use it for material for something else, which is quite good. Then we're going on to basically the couple of fusions for Shaddolls, right? Shaddoll Fusion, pretty standard fusion spell. Fuse Shaddoll monsters from hand to make. You can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll monster from hand using its effect, or from field. You can also then fusion summon from your deck, so you can use materials from your deck as long as your opponent is controlling something that was special summoned from the extra deck. I ran into a little thing with pendulum summons, which was weird earlier today, and I'm not sure why that didn't function. I couldn't activate Shaddoll Fusion when my opponent had special summoned pendulum monsters from the extra deck. Not sure if there's a ruling for that. Couldn't find one when I looked it up, but it didn't seem to work. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong. That'd be great. I just could not find a reason on why that wouldn't trigger. We're going next onto the Shaddoll Fusion, which is just a quick play version of Shaddoll Fusion minus the deck fusion support. So it's still a solid card. You want to run lots of fusions in this deck after all, since it is a fusion deck. Really solid. And Super Poly, pretty self-explanatory if you know what Super Poly does. Being able to get rid of your opponent's stuff really easily using your own stuff. It's also not bad as a finisher enabler. You can go with a whole board, it's a quick play, so you can just activate it, fuse off a couple of your stuff into another Shaddoll and just beat them down. Haven't had that come up much, but I have in the physical and it works pretty well. Then we're basically moving on to the extra deck. I don't want to make this segment too long, so try to wrap it up quickly, but Invoked Shaddoll, we went over. The Winder is your Floodgate card. If you can get to this on turn 1, that's ideal. You want to be going first to do this, ideally. Otherwise, you need to break a board and then do it. But it stops your opponent, it stops both players from being able to special summon more than once per turn. So once this is on board, anything after this is on board is your once per turn. So you can summon this, do one more special summon, that's it. Same for your opponent, they can do one special summon per their turn, unless they remove Winder, which as a 22-beat stick that can't be destroyed by card effects, is really solid. Clone is your Shaddoll negation. I was running 2 of this, dropped it down to 1. Didn't have it come up as much, so I swapped in a Starving Venom for one of my 2 copies of Clone. Starving Venom just way more relevant for me. This is fairly decent, like I said, it's a negation. It also gets you the ability to basically search and dump a card, so you can trigger any Shaddoll effect you want, pretty much. It's the main way to use it. Then you have Gristar as your fire attribute, mostly just using it as a fodder card. You're already running the fire Shaddoll, which I didn't really go over, sorry, completely skipped that. It's also the water one. Water one, kind of irrelevant, it's mostly just to banish 3 cards, simple. Fire one's actually removal. Flip effect, you can banish send one extra card to the graveyard. Matching attribute to pop something on their board, send it to banishment, quite good. And its send effect is to send cards from the top of your deck, basically milling, equal to the different attributes on board. Straightforward. Sorry we missed those for a second. And now I send Purgatory away. Well, now we're going to bring him back. There we go. So Gristar just supports that, so you have a fire attribute Shaddoll that you can use. Good for Super Poly, good for a few other things, so not too bad. Purgatrio, similar thing. You've got a fire, so you can run the Purgatrio with the Alistar combo. It's also good for taking out entire boards. Doesn't come up often, but again, when it does, kind of relevant, kind of nice. Always good to have at least one of. Also works with things like Ash Blossom from your opponent's side as well, so you don't have to rely on just your own fire attribute. You used to run it a lot when you weren't running the Magitus, because you used to have to go into Almirage, into Secure Gardener. Now you can just go into Magitus for your light attribute, so Purgatrio isn't as relevant. Obviously, 3 Shaddoll Construct instantly destroys any special summon monster when it goes into battle with it at the start of the damage step, so really handy. Also allows you to send a card, any Shaddoll card from deck to grave on summon, and then it also lets you get a spell or trap card back when this thing is sent to the graveyard, so really good card. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This is your Super Poly target, basically. Anything you want to get rid of that's 2 darks, really good. Combo that with Anaconda, which we'll look at now, can actually turn things dark, so you can turn any of your opponent's cards to dark. Then you can actually use Anaconda's other effect, pay 2,000, activate Super Poly with no cost, and then summon Starving Venom off just the Anaconda and one opponent's monster. Really, really nice. We already went over Macabre as your negation for Invoked, that's basically all it's for. And Shek is just your solid Earth card, since you're already running an Earth. Plus, since it's best of ones, it's nice to have some variety with Fire and Earth, so you have some decent Super Poly targets in the long run. That does cover the base of the deck. If you guys would like a much more in-depth look at this deck over time, and as I probably will change it up as the meta, changes and evolves, this is just your base. I've also got Pot of Avarice. If you know what Pot of Avarice does, target 5 from the grave, shuffle back into the deck, and then draw 2. It's just a draw 2 engine. And Resh is a flip card. Schism lets you fusion summon on your turn. I don't have a structure for these videos, and I apologize. I am going to get better at this. For these, Shadowverse used to be easy because you just go from one end to the other. These are kind of like you need to know the synergies and which way they work, so we'll get there. But that's the base of this start of this video. Already nearly 10 minutes in. I'm definitely going to have to work on shortening that down. But we are going to get into the match now and go over the gameplay, so we'll take a look at that. Alrighty. So we're going to get into this one as we load up the replay here. I think replay is going to be easier for me to showcase here than live gameplay, just because live gameplay can be all over the place. Sometimes they're extremely short with this deck, sometimes they can be exceedingly long, especially with time taken to take a move. This way I can, just kind of pause wherever we need to, for whatever reason. And also bring up the duel log. Can I turn off the card info? Did that not show up? Yeah, there we go. So, starting off my turn, going into the basic Meltdown Alistar combo, since I went first. Pretty straightforward, just going to make the Magitus combo here, so that I can get Macabre on board as my first turn play. Couldn't really think of much else to do since we got unlucky and didn't draw any Shadolls. Unfortunately, we did get DD crowed, so I had to change up my strategy a little bit. Luckily, I can use the Alistar in hand with the other invocation I have. Well, actually, with the base invocation I have, I can just use that. So I use the Alistar in hand, fusion those off into Macabre anyway, completely avoiding them, which is fine. Not too much of trouble. I then use Invocation's secondary effect, which actually allows you to shuffle the Alistar from Banishment back into your deck. Sorry, Alistar goes back to hand, Invocation goes back to deck. I'll get that right, you know. Then I summoned Kagalea, using the Alistar Engrave and another Dark Monster I had. They used, actually, I used their DD Crow, and set the Schism that I had. Made it really solid. They basically just went Traptrix set 2. Really easy. Not like they could do a lot. Being under Kagalea and Macabre really limits what you can do. But did let me just kind of attack over them, which is fine. Going into that main phase, I wish I could just stop those from showing up all the time. Not really a lot to say going for this one. I negate Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn's a risk that I had to take. I didn't want to see it, since they're not under a special summon restriction here, since we couldn't get to window. It's a little bit of a pain. They did then set up the treacherous trap hole play. I had to keep an eye on that. It was going to be a little bit of a problem. So I know they're going to hit my Macabre and my Kagalea with the treacherous trap hole, which is really going to set me back here. Fortunately, Sarah, not too much of a problem card for us to actually deal with low stats. So I basically just forced the Alistar play, because I know they're going to have to drop that, and if they don't target the Alistar here, we will fine either way. Even if they did, I wasn't too worried. Then we have the Invocation play, which isn't going to be too bad of a follow-up. We've actually got Squamata and Hedgehog in hand, so we could go straight into the window, which I think is what we end up doing here from memory, yeah. Straight into window, which does allow me to then trigger a dragon, because I can actually use Squamata to send, and I can use Hedgehog to grab. They do end up using Chain Hole, which is fine, so they're going to negate my Hedgehog, and then they're going to use Time Space to stop my window. Send it back to my deck, which is a bit disappointing. Not really what I wanted to see. Not a lot I can do about it though. We do still have Schism on board though, so fusion summoning another window, not really a problem. This was a 15 turn game, so it wasn't exactly super short. Replays definitely shorten it down a lot, making every turn much quicker. So I used the Schism to go into another window, and then we just attack over everything with the two monsters we have, making that fairly easy cleanup. Leaving with just 2 cards on board and no hand. They definitely put Traptrix in a rough spot, since now they also can't go wider with window, summoning a bunch of Traptrix. They also only had Retaliating Sea, which again, not too much of a threat, so I just had to go Schism into Construct, so I can send. So I can try and get another Dragon, I believe, in Grave, so I can take out their back row. Unfortunately, they did have Bottomless Trap Hole, which I kind of expected, honestly. I was expecting removal for my Construct. It's kind of just bait at this point. But Dragon was more important. I wanted to force this Gravedigger's Trap Hole. I'd rather force it now on this monster effect than on something else later. Especially since I had Alistar in hand. I didn't want to accidentally trigger an Alistar and then get punished. Fortunately, not really a problem. I do end up going for my Alistar on board, and then pretty much being able to go into a Schism. Unfortunately, the only target available was another window, so I used both my dragons to make a window. Unfortunately, Schism doesn't allow you to attack face with whatever you play, so I couldn't go for a direct attack with the windows. I could only beat down with Alistar for this turn. But I can freely attack monsters as much as I want with window, so yeah, it all worked out in the end, I would say. And we still have a Invoked Shaddoll to back us up. So it's really just a matter of keep taking out their thing over and over again. I felt like I'd pretty much stabilized at this point with what I had. Drawing a beast definitely wasn't terrible. So I decided to beat in. They only got 1 face down card. It's really not a concern yet. They've got them down to 1,500 life points. We're still at 5k. They go for the trap play, getting back bottomless, so they can try and set that up. It's a pretty decent play, honestly, but you're already facing down lethal potentially in the following turn if you don't out the Wendy. Time Space Trap Hole, another card they try and grab. They managed to restock their hand pretty well. They managed to go for a defensive play, making sure I don't do too much here. Fortunately for me, I do have the Schism play, which I can set up before they go into the other card. so I used my board this time to make up clone. There really wasn't a lot I could do about it. They were targeting my Schism anyway, which is why I mainly triggered it. I wanted to make sure I got the up clone out here. I wanted to negate the jar so they couldn't use it next turn, because I didn't feel like I was going to be able to take them out in the one turn here, given what kind of back row they set up. So I just played straight into the trap so that I could get rid of that. Basically just playing into their traps as much as I could, trying to limit how much I was losing versus what they were gaining. As long as I could sit on window and they didn't draw too much, I was pretty good for most of this game. It was really just a matter of floodgating in the early game. After that, it's just running them out of resources as much as possible. Especially here, where I really had to play around this since they kept popping all my stuff right at the end here. Every time I'd get close to having lethal, they would just pop it, which is a bit rough. Fortunately, I could grab Resh and then send Resh. I wish I could have went for game with the window, but since it was a Schism summon, again, could not attack directly. So I basically had to try and set up for the following turn, where I could just go window into my flip effect, kill off their stuff, which was fine here. So I could flip my Squamato still during their turn, destroy their card before they can do any link summons or anything with it. They have 2 back row, and I have lethal on board. If they don't have anything, we win. If they do, I can just set up again for next turn. Pretty much just biding our time at that point. So 15 turns, wasn't too bad. About 7-minute replay, so not too bad. I might have to see if I can get rid of the side stuff, though. It's definitely a thing. Otherwise, it didn't go too bad. We'll take a quick look at their deck here. Confirm opponent's deck. There we go. So this is what they ended up running, which looks pretty standard to me for Traptrix. I don't have a lot of experience with Traptrix. Looks like they were trying to go for the double or nothing play, but I did manage to get rid of that early, so we didn't have to worry about that in the long run, thankfully. Otherwise, that's about it for this video, honestly. The deck's quite solid for the Invoked Shaddoll. I obviously still lose some here and there, especially if you go second and they already set up on you. There's not much you can do about it, but if you can floodgate them early, it's really no problem at all. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. It's a lot of fun making these. I actually, like I said, really enjoy this game. Played easily 20, probably 30, 40 hours now actually of this game. Played it quite a bit. I'm working on a rocket build as well. I just haven't fully completed it. I was using it to clear story and stuff. If you want to catch me on stream, I have been streaming mornings for Australia about 10 AM AEST. So it's usually about when I'm around. You can check me out on Twitch there. Otherwise, I'll probably continue to make some YouTube videos here. They'll probably be about this long, somewhere around that 15 to 20 minute mark, covering just decks or alterations or games that I found interesting or fun. Till then, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Catch you next time.